Hello, everyone. Good evening. We're about to begin our show in just a few moments. I'd like to make an announcement for our Spanish-speaking audience. Buenas noches a todos. Bienvenidos. Vamos a comenzar en unos momentos. Les quiero avisar que vamos a tener interpretación en español. Para encontrar esa función, solo busque el botón que está colocado en la parte menor de la pantalla. Hay un icono de un globo. Oprimen ese y van a ver que dice inglés o español, y ahí pueden seleccionar español para escuchar la intérprete. All right, thank you very much. I'd like to begin by presenting and introducing the president of Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, Kate Roberts.
Good evening. Thanks, Rafa. Buenas tardes. And thanks for joining our San Benito County Election Forum on housing. As many of you may already know, the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership is a nonprofit, member-supported organization that works across our Tri-County region. Our work focuses on specific initiative areas that are the underpinning for a thriving economy: affordable housing, a strong workforce pipeline, ubiquitous broadband access, and climate change mitigation, which includes transportation improvements. Tonight's candidate forum is part of our advocacy and education work to help increase the supply of housing of all types and income levels across the region. MBEP has been doing nonpartisan election forums for 4 years. Everyone is welcome, and the hope is that the issues are discussed in a way that brings clarity to public policy. The mission of MBEP is to improve the economic health and quality of life in the region, and these types of forums contribute to that mission. I'd like to thank MBEP's housing team for engaging in San Benito County, Hollister, and San Juan Bautista, providing technical assistance to staff to help meet the region's housing goals. Some examples include MBEP staff participates in the county's ad hoc housing committee, helping with such efforts as developing a streamlined ADU policy, setting in-lieu fees, and updating the inclusionary housing ordinance. We also participated in the Hollister Vision Community Feedback Forum and advised on housing policy and ways to define smart growth. And lastly, we'll be participating in the upcoming Hollister General Plan Advisory Committee meetings. We have designed the forum to focus on key housing issues that need thoughtful leadership from our elected officials. Our goal is to provide this platform for candidates during this election and to help voters make an informed decision. Many thanks to the Youth Alliance and to Diane Ortiz for joining us as co-host. So now I'd like to introduce back on the stage Rafael Hernandez, one of MBEP's Stellar Housing Program Associates, and hand the program back to him. Rafa.
Thank you so much, Kate. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in and for spending part of your evening with us today. My name is Rafael Hernandez. I am the housing associate for Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, or MBEP, as we're known. And I'm excited today to be able to be here with you with one of the coolest people I've met, a great colleague, Diane. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rafael. Thanks for calling me cool too. So yes, I am the Executive Director for the Youth Alliance. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, Youth Alliance has been investing in young people and families for over 25 years, specifically in San Benito County and South Santa Clara County, and have been participating in MBEP for a number of years. So thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. We're really looking forward to the event.
Diane, I was thinking we're focusing on housing issues in this forum, and I wanted to ask you, in your work with Youth Alliance, in your work in the community, how would you say you've seen housing affect or impact folks that you work with?
Yeah, great question. You know, your zip code and where you live have an impact on how long you live, your employment, education, your safety. And, you know, California was already in a housing crisis. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And Youth Alliance has seen the compounding effects of crowded housing, lack of affordable housing, the high cost of rent, So this is truly, housing is one of the most critical social justice issues of our time. And I believe that, you know, our local policies and actions in San Benito County impact our families on a daily, in our daily lives. So we see this in kids couch surfing, young adults not being able to afford housing or renting a room, even if they have a full-time job, and growth without a coinciding growth and increase in social services or investments in community spaces. So, you know, Youth Alliance has prioritized right now, especially during this pandemic, working with partners on two critical issues, which include the 100-day challenge to end youth homelessness for youth ages 18 to 24, many of whom we're finding are young parents. And we're also participating in a regional MBEP task force to address the rental crisis during the pandemic. So, you know, we do believe that our local leadership is so critical, especially now, because what our leaders do and what they don't do will have an impact on our local families and children. Right now, we'll see those impacts, and it could definitely impact a generation to come. So, you know, I am looking forward to hearing from our candidates tonight, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to co-host the event with you and with MBEP. So thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. You know, there's 2 points that you made that are so critical. One, local politics. I want folks to know, and young people in particular, right, that work in local politics impacts our day-to-day lives so much. And the idea that also housing is so central to so many issues that you mentioned there. I used to work with young people I used to teach. So that's why the work of the Youth Alliance really connects with me. And I realized that their housing situation impacted the work we were doing with them. So in one way or the other, you have to deal with housing, whether you want to or not.
That's right, absolutely.
So that brings us to our forum for tonight. It's housing focused. And let's look at our agenda. We're going to look at the 3 jurisdictions in San Benito County. The 3 races are county supervisor candidates, the city of Hollister candidates, and finally, the San Juan Bautista candidates. And we'll end our show there. Now, there's a lot of different folks that are going to be speaking tonight. So let's take a look at who's on the roster. At the county, we've invited every candidate that we saw was running. Sent out invitations to everyone. So these are the folks that we have invited and that are on, that you'd have a chance to vote for in the county, for the county race. And for Hollister, we're going to look at, there's a mayoral race and 2 districts for the city council race. And again, we invited all the folks to participate today. The mayor was unable to, Mayor Velasquez last minute unfortunately had to cancel because of a work conflict, but we appreciated that he wanted to participate. Other folks had similar schedule conflicts. And lastly, we're going to end with San Juan Bautista candidates. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Let's begin. We'll start with our county supervisor candidates. Let's see, county, and we're going to start with District 2. Now, at this point, what we're going to do is give every candidate 2 minutes to present about, and they're going to talk about their housing agenda, solutions, their ideas for housing. We'll give each candidate 2 minutes to present. And what we'll do is they'll have a 30-second warning to wrap up. And when their time is up, we'll come back on and signal that the 2 minutes have expired. So let's begin with our first county supervisor candidate. First one for the evening is, let's see his slide here coming up. Okay. Now, Colin Kosmicki had submitted a slide, and as I mentioned before, he had a last minute unforeseen circumstance, so he had to cancel. I appreciated that he contacted me. So we wanted to show you his slide, as he did participate and was prepared to appear tonight. So thank you for that. So now let's go with our next candidate, candidate Wayne Norton. We have you here. There's this slide. All right, sir, you have 2 minutes. The floor is yours. Let's see, Wayne, is your microphone off? I think we might be experiencing some technical issues. Oh, there you are. Very good, sir. All right, you have 2 minutes.
Can you see me? Because I can't see my own image here. So, but let's just get started here. So I want to say thank you for inviting me. This is an important topic, and I'm really glad that MBEP is doing this. You know, when I started running for county supervisor, I did a lot of thinking about the nuanced and complex issue of housing and growth. And I'm fortunate that I have some supporters who have expertise in land acquisition, construction, and financing of affordable housing. And they helped us put together a white paper on affordable housing. And if you want to take a look at that, that's available on my website, which is waynenorton.com. But to sort of take a look at the, you know, one thing about San Diego County, and by the way, Diane, everyone in San Diego County knows that you're cool. So that's a well-known fact. But in San Diego County, although we're in the Monterey Bay area, our local economy is actually probably much closer to Merced County than it is to Monterey County. And so we have the situation where we have skyrocketing housing prices, which has created dislocation of many of our families growing up here. Our kids and grandkids are having to move far away because we just can't afford to live here. So the focus of our work, and on the slide, is to try to figure out a way to encourage more affordable housing. And so I propose a couple things. One is the 40% of all housing units that are permitted in San Diego County will be in the affordable range, 10% affordable to very low, 10% to low, and then 20% for the missing middle housing goals that we have. And also I propose that we create a housing trust, because right now we don't have a way to subsidize affordable housing in our county. So I am suggesting that we put together a housing trust. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So that was our first district of the county. Let's go on to County Supervisor District 4 candidates. All right, so Wayne, you can tune out. Thank you, sir. And here we have Commissioner Robert Gibson. He'll be the first one on this section. You have 2 minutes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Rafa, and thank you for MBEP for putting this on. I am the Vice Chairman of the San Benito County Planning Commission. We have been working on various ordinances for quite a while. Unfortunately, they were deemed non-essential for purposes of COVID. So things were delayed, but we're hoping to have them before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors before the end of the year. So multiple families in one house, there are many consequences to that issue. There's disrupted sleep patterns, increased noise and stress levels, increased risks of COVID or other exposures, and increased wear and tear to the rental properties. Apartment complexes won't raise the number of cars, residents, or road use, but will allow current resident families to live separately as a family while still enjoying the benefits of shared community living. I want to discourage single-family housing and encourage multifamily housing, which includes affordable and workforce housing, both rental and for sale options, depending on the income level. Our RENA numbers, as you can see, we have not come close to attaining those. We are not alone in the state, unfortunately, but we have a long way to go. There's not enough very low, or moderate housing. Part of the solution would be to hire a full-time grant writer for the county. Not only would they be able to go after funds for housing, but many other departments have shortages that we could use those funds for. Ag land, there's a lot of concern about using up our ag land for housing. I want to preserve and protect farmland. We must increase density to do this. Instead of building single family homes from one side of the valley to the other, we must build up, in my opinion. We need to also focus on funding for farm worker housing and shelters for the homeless. There are some programs that are starting, but we could borrow from our neighbors in Monterey County, use some grant funds, use some county funds to provide housing for those folks. We need to build strong relationships with the cities of San Juan Bautista and Hollister and work together to form a more perfect and cohesive housing strategy. We also need to encourage the construction of ADUs in order to stabilize or reduce rents. The ADU ordinance we've been working on since late last year, unfortunately, we stopped meeting in February due to COVID. And that is one of the ordinances that we're finally getting to work on again. And the hope is to have that back to the Planning Commission and Board before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. All right, folks. Our next and final supervisor, we have two left. Our next county supervisor candidate is Mr. Bob Tiffany. So, sir, you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, and thanks for having us. Housing in our county is one of the more challenging issues we face. And given the time limitation, I just wanted to touch on it on a macro level. First of all, we simply need better management of our residential growth. It starts with the city of Hollister and San Diego County working collaboratively on housing. It's not happening now, and that's a disservice to our residents. We also need to look at the quality of each proposed residential development and ask certain key questions. Does it positively enhance our community, not just in terms of meeting the housing needs of our residents, but does it bring added amenities to our community like parks, tree-lined walkways, and biking trails? Maybe most importantly, are the direct impacts of the development not only fully mitigated, but overall do impact fees and the like add, not detract from our overall infrastructure needs? Most people I talk to are not as focused on the houses themselves, but instead on the fact that they're going up while we've fallen way behind in our infrastructure. Second, and this is critically important, when we do have residential development, we need a much better mix of housing. Too much market rate single family homes are being built. We need more affordable housing. And when I say affordable, it's on all levels. Low income, moderate for working families that otherwise can't live here, apartments and rentals for those who can't buy, especially for young people. And then how do we get more affordable housing? It starts with updating our county's residential development requirements. We must ensure that our county's policies and zoning match and support the housing goals that we're trying to obtain. Not only do we need to demand more from developers, but add incentives that encourage and remove disincentives that discourage affordable housing. Lastly, we need to be more creative. Just one good example is the kind of sweat equity homes that are being built on Southside Road right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. All right, folks. Our last candidate for the county supervisor race that we have tonight is Mr. Dan Valcazar. Dan, 2 minutes, take it away.
Thank you, Rafael, and thank you, Diane. You know, I can't help, thank you, Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. I can't help but comment about what you guys said about the youth. That really strikes a chord with me, so I'm glad you guys are talking about the youth and the young adults and what we are doing or trying to do to bring them into the home ownership with this tough economy. So what I'm focusing here on my slide, and I appreciate everything that everybody else said, because again, there's so many details and I won't go into too many of them here, but mine is from housing to home. And I talk about below market value, which equals affordable, because if you look in San Benito County, a lot of the single family homes are too expensive. So there are ways that you can provide below market value homes. And if you did, and it was mentioned about Riverside, which is right here in this picture, these were built with sweat equity, and they have what are called deed restricted properties, which means you can't just turn around and sell them at market rate. They should be there for the next group that needs some below market value houses that are comfortable. The idea about shared appreciation upon resale is a great idea. It would motivate the owners to take care of their homes and then possibly share in the appreciation upon sale so that they could use that money to move towards conventional home ownership at regular market rates, which provides more pride of ownership, et cetera. And the ways we can do it, I put down there. The developer project impact fee waivers that the county can do is one way. We already have in lieu fees for other developers where they pay into a fund for buildings and housing in other areas. There's density bonuses that could come into play, grants. MBEV is familiar with all of this. You heard about grant writers. We certainly could use them in San Benito County. The ADU, additional dwelling unit utilization, can be used separately or for infill. Obviously, the state's pushing really hard with their SB 330 bill or law, and rezoning of existing land or existing use, like we could take a commercial industrial and make it residential. So there's a lot of things that we can do, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Well, thank you all to all the supervisor candidates for coming here and sharing your ideas. I know in the 2 minutes it's brief, but we appreciate that you're able to bring your ideas in that time. And what we did was, if we go back to the last slide, just a quick explanation. What we have is, we're gonna go into our survey questions. We sent the candidates 7 questions. They're yes, no answers. And we're gonna show them their yes, no side by side so we can see how the candidates answered. And then we're going to give them 3 minutes to clarify the details of their answers and to give their final closing statements. So if we go back, I'd like to read the questions for audience members. These are the questions that the candidates saw. The first one, do you support going beyond the existing renter protections of the California Assembly Bill, AB 3088, known as the Tenant, Homeowner, and Small Landlord Relief and Stabilization Act of 2020? A little detail on that for folks that may not know, folks in the audience. AB 3088 is about giving eviction relief for residential renters and foreclosure protections for small landlords who are financially impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, it is known as the Tenant, Homeowner, and Small Landlord Relief and Stabilization Act. The second question, would you support efforts to upzone for duplexes, fourplexes in areas currently zoned for single-family homes? The next one we asked was, do you believe the housing impact fees should be restructured? The fourth one, should the county prioritize investing in more rental housing for farm workers? And to our candidates, we specified that investing could take also the form of investing more land for employers to build housing for their workers, farm workers. The fifth question we asked them, as you see here, is do you believe housing development is tied to economic growth? The next one, do you believe the sphere of influence for the boundaries between the city of Hollister and San Juan Bautista should be decided by those jurisdictions in order to prioritize infill development? And the last question we asked, do you support Proposition 15, otherwise known as the Schools and Communities First initiative to establish a split roll tax on commercial properties in order to provide a more equitable tax structure for businesses while raising revenue for essential state and local services? A detail on that for folks that in the audience also is that if passed, this proposition would require that commercial and industrial properties, except those zoned as commercial agriculture, for them to be taxed based on their market value, while taxes on residential properties would continue to be assessed on purchase price. Again, if it passes, this initiative would generate, it's said to potentially generate hundreds of millions of dollars in new tax revenue for a region that could be used to support sustainable educational facilities, local government, and programming that also includes more housing. So that's how it found its way in our housing forum. And I'd like to bring in Diane back here on stage with me. So Diane, we worked on these questions together. There's so many questions asked. We really wanted to keep it relevant. How do you think?
You know, I actually, thank you for bringing me back on. I actually had a question, if you don't mind answering or talking a little bit about the impact of Proposition 15 and the impact on small businesses. I think that's really important right now.
Yes, that's true. Well, so from my understanding, small businesses are exempt up to $3 million of their assessed value. So this proposition exempts those businesses whose property is worth $3 million or less and allows for an extended phase-in period. So that's my understanding. Any commercial or industrial property owner with more than $3 million of California real estate would have to pay taxes based on the current market value of the property rather than the original. And that's likely much lower, the purchase price, the original purchase price. So smaller business owners would be exempt. That's my understanding. I'm looking forward to hear clarifications and discussion from our candidates on how they answered these questions and why they gave their yes and no. So let's begin again with our first candidate. Let's look at our graph here. So you see there on the left side, the questions in shorthand abbreviated. And you can look across and see, if you look down each name, you'll see their answers and how they fare compared with other folks that are here tonight as well. I see a lot of, well, there's points of agreement and points of disagreement, or at least differences in answers. A couple abstained, so I'm curious to see how those will be explained. So let's begin with our first candidate, Wayne Norton. You have 3 minutes to address this and to say your closing statements.
Okay, well, a couple questions that I'd like to talk a little bit about is, first of all, number 2, upzoning duplexes and fourplexes in single-family home zoning. I think that could be very appropriate as infill projects. I think if there are near services, they have to be near services and in city limits, and I think that'd be a good idea. Number 3, restructure housing impact fees. I'd really like to explore. I'd really like to explore a couple things like charging fees by the unit rather than square foot. And I'd also like to explore the idea of deferring fees until occupancy. And 6, spheres of influence. Yes, cities ought to make a decision about their spheres of influence as long as they're reasonable and as long as they intend it someday to be able to bring that in, those areas into the city. And I think that's why LAFCO process is so important, is that it needs to be reasonable. And so with that, I'd kind of like to go into my closing. I'd like to thank MBEP for this opportunity to discuss this important topic. You know, there are some in our community who want no housing growth at all. And I understand that frustration, but you know, our current state of non-strategic growth has stressed our infrastructure and our nerves. But we know that communities that do not grow are communities that stagnate. Many of us in San Diego County remember the period of zero housing growth in the late 90s to the mid 20s. We lost jobs, businesses, and community spirit. I don't think there's anyone who wants to relive that experience. I know what proactive leadership is, and I understand state legislation and the state's ability to enforce compliance with its local growth goals. The California Department of Housing and Community Development has set requirements that San Benito County and our cities must provide permits to build and support affordable housing. But the data shows that in San Benito County, we are building almost no housing in this income range, and we haven't been. That puts the county and our cities in a non-compliant position with the state. The building of these affordable homes does not mean adding urban sprawl that many of our residents are concerned about. The cities and counties can work together on infill projects. There are specific grants that can provide development dollars to supplement new housing trusts that I've proposed. And I will work to prevent developers from using legislation to bypass local land use authority and environmental review as we strive to be compliant with the state regulations. If you look at Hollister's, the state's recent invalidation of Hollister's growth control restrictions, you'll see that the state intends to enforce its housing goals. Growth in our community should serve our community. Growth must be sustainable and accompanied with policy that requires local hiring and livable wages, as well as reach goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. My goal is to ensure that we benefit from strategic and smart growth. We want all of our children and grandchildren to be able to live and thrive in the communities in which they grew. That will be the focus of my actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Appreciate your time here. All right, well, let's go on to our next candidate. Candidate Robert Gibson. You have 3 minutes. I'd like to hear about your thoughts on these questions and your closing statements.
Thank you once again, and thank you for inviting us here. Sorry, I'm a little hoarse. I'm not sure what happened. So as far as number one, I do not believe that we should add more government oversight. I believe that people are protected sufficiently at the moment. Number two, to upzone, I firmly believe in single family homes will be the destruction of our county's ag industry if we continue to allow it as we have. Restructuring housing impact fees, I abstain because I don't know what that means, and I'm not going to say yes or no unless I understand what it means. I believe in prioritizing investment for more rental housing for farm workers. We do have the camp on South Side, not too far from where I live, and I think that we should definitely add more housing there, as well as utilizing Mr. Rivas's bill for farm worker housing on private lands. Housing development is definitely tied to economic development. If a community is not growing with housing, it will either become stagnant or eventually will begin to die, as we saw after the moratorium was put in place in Hollister. The sphere of influence, that is a job of LAFCO. I don't think the cities should have control to expand or decrease their own spheres. I think LAFCO does a good job. And if the cities believe that they need to change their sphere, they can appeal to LAFCO to change that for them. And do you support Proposition 15? No. California already has some of the highest taxes in the nation. I don't think increasing property tax on businesses will help anyone. It will only drive more businesses out of the state more quickly than they're currently doing. And that will not help anybody. It would simply be destroying the economy of this state. And why you should vote for me. I'm a 5th generation resident of the county. I'm a farmer, currently working on a 15-acre family-owned organic walnut orchard. I also work at a vineyard at Tres Pinos. I'm the vice chairman of the San Benito County Planning Commission, having been appointed by Jim Gillio. I have enjoyed my work. Unfortunately, it takes quite a while to get ordinances updated, as government is a big machine and it's difficult to get it to move. I am honest, dedicated, fair, and balanced, and I'm open to listening and allowing everyone to inform me of their views. I'm always learning. I don't think I know all the answers. I like to research topics, both privately and by asking colleagues and residents what they think. And I am the only candidate with local government experience, and I can hit the ground running on day one. I'm also the only candidate that has committed to running multiple terms, and I firmly believe that the position should be 40 hours a week or more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Robert. All right. Candidate Bob Tiffany, same thing. You have 3 minutes. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, on question number one, the reason why I say yes, we do need beyond it. This is a short-term solution that will expire early next year. And given the fact that the pandemic is clearly going to go beyond that, I feel that we need to have further protections for both renters and landlords going beyond AB 3088. As far as the zoning question, absolutely, we need to go beyond single family homes. We need to have a better mix of housing, as I've already mentioned, and this kind of zoning flexibility will be help in that area. As far as impact fees, what we need to have is, we don't want to have impact fees that create a disincentive for developers to build affordable housing. So when those situations arise, we need to make sure there's a level playing field for affordable housing. And again, impact fees don't deter developers from looking at affordable housing. As far as farm worker housing, absolutely. Agriculture is the #1 industry in San Benito County. It's a critical industry, and we have to be sure the workers that work in our fields, harvesting our crops, have a place to live. The county is working in this area by reducing or waiving impact fees, and Robert Rivas is trying to streamline the process for building housing for this, but this is a key area. Of course, housing development does tie to economic development, as was already stated. You can't simply stop growing. That is the death knell for any community. As far as sphere of influence, this is a complicated one. All I will say is that we have to have the cities of Hollister, San Juan Bautista, and San Diego County work together to optimize where our houses are going. Otherwise, we won't have infill and we will have too much leapfrog development. As far as Proposition 15, the reason I abstained is this is a complicated issue, and there's strong arguments both pro and con. The pro side, yes, it will bring in revenue, but on the downside, as a small business owner, I'm concerned about how it will impact unintentionally. Many small businesses rent from larger corporations on triple net basis, and they will be impacted negatively. So I'd like to see revenue coming from other sources. Just wrapping up, I just want to say I'm a fourth generation San Diego County resident. I've been in business for over 30 years and in community service for over 30 years. And I believe this experience will serve me well if elected supervisor in District 4. I appreciate your support. You can learn more about me on www.bobtiffanyforsupervisor.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. Appreciate that. Well, we have our final candidate for today for supervisor, Mr. Dan Valcazar. Same thing, 3 minutes. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Rafael. The first one, going beyond, the reason I said no is because, as you've heard, there is already protections in place, but we do have to watch it very closely. So you could say yes or no on this one because everybody's attention is going to be on this. But if we have a vaccine soon and we start taking care of business, we might have our economic boom turn right around. But I would say no, but we would watch it closely. Upzoning for duplexes, fourplexes. The reason I said no on this is there are very established single family residences that get very surprised when all of a sudden there's this high density coming in next door. So I'm against that, but I am for upzoning, but in areas that is the neighborhood's in favor. Restructuring housing impact fees. I talked briefly about this in my little presentation. This is where the county could waive impact fees for affordable housing. They've done it in the past. They can do it in the future. It is a very good way to actually motivate developers because they save money on their building and development costs. Prioritizing investing in more rental housing for farm workers. You know, there's a bill, AB 1783, and the landowners and the employers are very concerned about this third-party oversight that Robert Rivas did push forward. I like Robert Rivas, but I'm concerned about this. I think that we should really listen to the landowners and the employers for the farm workers and how we can provide housing, because they've been doing it and they know it much better than us. Economic development, I would just say that, yes, it's tied to our economy, but just in a small way. Commercial in a bigger way, that's why we want to bring in commercial for jobs. Deciding sphere of influence, I really believe that this was there just because there's a lot of infighting that should not be there. Part of my campaign is to provide my professionalism and my strong leadership. We need to stop the infighting. This question would not be there if people could be professional, respectful, and get along, and again, use LAFCO like you've heard. Proposition 15, this one here is pretty straightforward. Again, good or bad, I have some very wealthy friends, and just because you own a big building doesn't mean you have a lot of money. And as was mentioned, triple net means that if you increase taxes on a commercial building, it flows down to the tenant, which means you're impacting the people you're trying to help. So the money can come from a variety of areas, but I don't like this, especially because of COVID. A lot of people are impacted, so I say no. And in closing, I would just say, I'm the only Dan, I'm the only Valcazar, so you can find me easily on Facebook and on my website. And I would just say 1522, which is 15 years of law enforcement experience. I'm a law and order. I'm big on leadership. I'm big on professionalism and transparency. I swore to tell the truth. I'm held to the highest standard when it comes to that. And I believe in bold action, and I believe I'm the best candidate to move this county forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate it. And thank you to all the candidates for your time. Diane, what'd you think? I'd like to say that in the little bits of time, the candidates were able to convey their positions and a lot of their ideas. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely learned quite a bit about the candidates. So appreciate the conversation for sure. And I think we are ready to move over to our Hollister candidates now.
Yes, we are.
So we'll see this slide that just gives a quick overview of the candidates that are coming up for election for the city of Hollister. And as was mentioned previously, the current mayor, Ignacio Velasquez, was invited, but unfortunately had a last minute work issue, and so apologizes and is not able to make it tonight. But we do appreciate his consideration and time. And then we will be moving over to Sal Mora, who is running for mayor as our mayor candidate. And I'd like to turn it over to him now. You have, Mr. Mora, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, hello. Thank you for inviting us, all the candidates, to participate in this event. It's always great to share our ideas, so that way the constituents know what we're thinking. With my housing agenda, I want to, we have a lot of single family homes that have been approved, that were approved 15, 20 years ago and are just now starting to break ground. So I think we're fine with single family units. I think we really need to focus on, it's kind of the same things that other candidates spoke about, but we need to focus on affordable housing units, especially with senior housing. That also includes senior housing. A lot of people don't talk about senior housing. It's kind of like they're forgotten, but we have an aging community and we need to address their needs as well. There's a lot of seniors that are on fixed incomes, and it's disappointing that so much of their income, monthly income is used towards housing. We need to find a way to lessen the burden on them and help them out as well. So I think, like here in Hollister, we have we had, I think about a year ago, we opened up the senior housing apartment off of Westside Boulevard, which was great. We have a long waiting list. We have a need. So I think we need to focus on that. And with affordable housing, also includes workforce housing, especially for educators. There's too many, I know a lot of educators here at local schools, a lot of them can't afford to live here. So we need to do something to help them be able to live in the county that in the city that they live in, work in, sorry. But we also need to streamline the process for ADUs. This is a great way to get people to not have to worry about building single family homes. Is if people have the land and the space for ADUs, we should be streamlining that process. And we should also be encouraging mixed use projects like the 400 block that just broke ground. Great project. It's mixed use, we have commercial and housing. It's great because it's it doesn't take up a lot of land. It's not like single family homes. So those are the things that we need to address.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Mora. And now we are moving on to City Council District 1, which we had 2 candidates running for District 1. And unfortunately, Mr. Rick Perez was unable to attend tonight. We just found out that he was unable to attend, but he did submit a slide that we're happy to share with the folks online right now. And Mr. Jose Fernandez was also unable to attend and sends his regrets. And we will now move it over to City Council District 4 and candidates for that. And starting up with candidates for District 4, we have Mr. Tim Burns, who will open it up for us this evening. And Mr. Tim Burns, you have, I saw Julio. Julio sent a slide, but was unable to make it as well. That slide just popped up and went away. Right there, better vision. And was unfortunately unable to make it tonight. But we will move over to Mr. Tim Burns, who is here with us this evening. And Mr. Tim Burns, you have 2 minutes, so please take it away.
Thank you. I would like to thank you for hosting tonight's event. On my slide, I'm going to keep it relatively simple. First of all, we need to limit the number of approved market rate single-family residents that are being built. This is a controversial thing right now. And so we also need to hire a subject matter expert land use attorney to develop a strategy to address Senate Bill 330 requirements. We simply just can't say no. If you think back to times where you've said things and regretted them, I think if we were to just say no, we would regret it. We would be subject to some potential loss of tax revenue. We could also be subject to fines, penalties of significant value, and potential lawsuits. We're absolutely going to need to work with our county to limit the number of market rate single-family residences. And we also need to address migrant worker housing needs. One of the challenges with the county right now is, for example, in my district on Fairview, there are 3 projects that are currently in development, and that's going to add about 2,000 new residences to that neighborhood or that district, and that's going to create a whole lot of problems without a whole lot of benefits. And so we need to work together with the county to address those issues. We need to have a more inclusive general plan update committee to limit the number of subject matter experts. Seems short-sighted to me or not very visionary. We need to create an ordinance to restrict tentative maps to 3-year life. That's part of the problem we got into. The developers got permission, but then they land bag things for a variety of reasons. And we need to find a way to limit that. We need to consider some other possible rezoning, upzoning of existing parcels. We need to look at affordable housing possibilities, and we need to prevent urban sprawl. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Burns, for that. Now we are moving forward with the survey questions. And as Rafael mentioned previously, we asked the candidates 7 questions. There are very similar to the Board of Supervisors county's questions. However, a little different, a couple of them are different. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the Hollister survey questions now, but just a reminder to our candidates that after we read the survey questions, there will be an opportunity for them to provide 3 closing remarks for 3 minutes to clarify these responses, and they will have a 30-second warning in the chat box to remind them of their time to go ahead and close out those comments. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with the Hollister survey questions now. And number 1, I'm going to go ahead and read those questions. I don't know if we're having technical difficulties. I'm seeing it on my end, but I don't know if we're having technical difficulties online, but I'm going to keep moving forward. So we're okay, Rafael?
I think we're good. There was some technical difficulties, but it should be good now.
Okay, great. Because I was just moving forward. So, okay. So we're going to go ahead and read the survey questions. And as I mentioned previously, we have 7 of those. So I'll just read them quickly. Do you support going beyond the existing renter protections of the California Assembly Bill AB 3088, known as the Tenant, Homeowner, and Small Landlord Relief and Stabilization Act of 2020? Number 2, would you support efforts to upzone for duplexes, fourplexes in areas currently zoned for single-family homes? Yes or no? Number 3, do you believe the housing impact fee should be restructured? Number 4, should the city prioritize investing in more rental housing for farm workers? And number 5, do you believe housing development is tied to economic growth? Number 6, should the city work with the county to help incentivize both residential and commercial infill development? Number 7, do you support Proposition 15, otherwise known as the Schools and Communities First Initiative, to establish a split roll tax on commercial properties in order to provide a more equitable tax structure for businesses while raising revenue for essential state and local services? So thank you for that. We will go ahead and move to the next slide, which shows the candidates' responses to these survey questions. And Rafael, did you have anything to add on that? Now that we're looking at our survey responses from our candidates, we see that we have 2 of our candidates here that will be able to provide responses to those answers here.
Yeah, I'm curious because a lot of these questions we use for the county, as they applied. And now we're going to look at it on the city level. So I'm curious to see what things are the same, what would be different based that it's on Hollister instead of the county. And the first thing that I see here that stands out to me is there's a lot of yeses, a lot of agreement. But we do see a couple, the two abstain, right? Those are the ones that stand out. So I'm curious to see, to hear the discussion on this, to hear them talk about this.
Well, great. We'll go ahead and call Mr. Mora up, our mayoral candidate, who is here with us this evening. And Mr. Mora, you have 3 minutes, so you have the floor.
Great, thank you very much. I'll start kind of in reverse. I kind of work my way up. Question number 7, do I support Prop 15? I do not. I understand the proposed benefits, but I like other candidates. I'm unsure, and I'm worried that there's going to be unintended consequences for our small business owners, even though it says it's not intended to harm the small business owners. But we've known and we've seen things in the past that say it's not going to happen, but it does happen, especially when it comes to affecting small business owners. The property owners aren't just going to pay for the extra taxes without passing on some of the costs to small business owners, which then which will trickle down to the consumers. And especially during this time when a lot of people are hurting economically, I just don't think it's the right time for us to do. I'd like to see it maybe revamped as well, maybe increase the property assessment level to be increased instead of maybe from $3 million, maybe increase it to $6 to $7 million. That way it's less people affected. Number 5, housing development tied to economic development. Yes, most commercial development looks at demographics, rooftops, but they also look at news articles and news clips about views on growth and functionality of City Hall with the local officials. And right now they just, for us, we're not functioning very well. There's a lot of infighting and a lot of social media bashing, and that's not good. And companies pay attention to those things and may keep them away from coming to Hollister. And we need to change those things. That way, the potential businesses know that Hollister is open for business. We want them to come, and that, we may not always agree on all policies, but that we're going to be civil with one another, and we'll treat the potential businesses with respect. And right now we're just not having that. And I think that's really why we're not growing economically. And that's something that we really need to change. I want to work hard with our business community, as well as Board of Supervisors, city staff, and the rest of City Council, for us to, we need to grow economically. We want businesses to want to attract businesses that can bring jobs. That way our kids aren't traveling on 25 or 156 for work. And there is a need for us to grow commercially and economically, and we need to be welcoming. Upzone for duplexes, fourplexes, I was kind of thinking about that, and those should be maybe in certain areas. But the one thing that I do like is that we could possibly have more people living in a smaller area, so that we don't have to worry about single family homes. So it's not a no or a yes, but I'm kind of favoring it, but I'm not exactly, I want to do a little more research. And I just want you guys to know that I'm going to work hard for our constituents here. I want to restore stability to City Hall, and I'm going to be the type of mayor that's going to work for the community and for the business community as well. Because when our businesses are successful, our city's successful. It means more sales tax revenue that's going to be increased. And I'm going to work together with everyone to help us get out of this mess and bring back pride to Hollister.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mora. And now we are moving on with our District 4 candidate for the City of Hollister, Mr. Tim Burns. Mr. Burns, you are up, and reminder, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just able to unmute myself. So I want to confirm that you can hear me. Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry. First of all, again, I want to thank you for hosting the event. As you look at the different questions, I really only want to focus on a few of them. I think the answers speak for themselves, more or less. So with regard to number one, I want to say that that is a qualified yes for me. And it's hard to project where we're going to be with COVID moving forward. And so if we still have the consequences of COVID-19 as we roll into next year, I absolutely support the idea of the Assembly bill. I'd like to also focus a little bit on the farm worker item number 4, prioritizing investment in more rental housing. I had the benefit of about 3 years ago working for the RMA for Monterey County, and I had the wonderful opportunity to see Tanamir and Anil construct some amazing campuses for the farm workers in Spreckles. And I know it can be done, and we need to partner with the private sector to provide the greatest resource and the best outcome. I can also tell you it's a critical thing for me, because at one point in my life, I worked for the city of Hollister as their first full-time code enforcement officer, and my primary focus was substandard housing. And I absolutely saw many times in the city of Hollister where there were migrant workers that were living in garages, where property owners would take a garage and throw 5 sets of twin bunk beds in and charge people $100 a bed a week. You do the math, it's pretty simple. And that was unreported income, and it was unsafe, unsanitary, and a problem. And so, yes, we absolutely need to make that a priority. It's part of our culture. It's part of our heritage. We need to embrace it and support it. And then the last one I really want to focus on is item number 7, Proposition 15. I clearly, unequivocally do not support it. I say no new taxes. And ultimately, I fear, again, COVID is going to have an adverse impact on that proposition for our small business owners. We know all those costs are going to be pass-throughs, and as a consumer, we'll bear that cost as well. So that's my position on those questions. I want to wrap up by saying again, I humbly ask for your vote. I'm a retired police officer and a retired police ombudsman. I'm also have a 15-year career in community development, primarily in code enforcement. I've worked for a large number of cities in code enforcement, community development. I'm currently on a general plan implementation committee as a code enforcement and neighborhood preservation subject matter expert. I served on a general plan review committee with another city. And so I'm intimately familiar with those things. And I think with my education, my experience, and my life experience, I would be a valuable asset to the city council. So with that, I'll end my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, that wraps up Hollister. What do you think, Diane?
Well,
We had, you know, the one that stood out for me is AB 3088. I heard some good discussion on it today. One of the things that I feel is a factor that people are discussing about, whether they would say yes or no, is the uncertainty issue. Whether you think, well, how much and how long into the future do we need to think about protections for renters as well as for landlords, small landlords who depend on rental revenue to pay their bills and do upkeep. Maybe about in March, I don't know if people were thinking that by now we would be, maybe they were thinking we'd be back to normal, who knows? So I think that's what makes it difficult to project into the future. What do you think?
yeah, I think the pandemic has certainly thrown us all for a loop. I think we thought, oh, a couple months we could get through this, and the pandemic has just, caused us to consider so many different factors, including the economic crisis that has hit. And it's just, but it's really a testament to the fact that we really need proactive leadership, because these are complex problems. And we're going to need these proactive leaders who are going to be willing to collaborate, in order to address these issues. So I appreciated the conversation in the statements today by our candidates.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Well, we're not quite done yet. We have one more jurisdiction left, and we have one more candidate left to present for us today. We're going on to, let's see here, we're moving on to our next candidate, which is going to be San Juan Bautista candidate. We invited all the folks, and we're happy to have Mr. John Freeman, Councilmember John Freeman, here with us today. So running again for City Council. So sir, you have 2 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Kate Roberts, Matt Huerta, and Rafael for putting this on, and Diane, who I don't know, but I'm really glad you did this. My plan for San Juan Bautista, you may or may not know that we've recently, in the past year and a half, added about 115 housing units to our housing stock, and that's a 20% increase. And so I think if you put a 20% increase in any other city, you would say, oh God. So we haven't, and they're all single family resident homes. So I want to concentrate on multifamily housing and housing for seniors. And so if there's any other developments coming forward, which I know there will be, I like Wayne, I want to put 40% of the above to include housing for seniors, such as condominiums, townhouses, and apartments. We are going to be working soon on a auxiliary dwelling unit ordinance so that homeowners can easily build what they want to build in their backyards for granny units or even rental units. One of the things I've always believed in is balanced growth. Balanced growth leads to smart growth. And if you ask me what I mean by balanced, I mean we also need a balance of light industrial and commercial space for the financial health of our city. Because most of you people probably already know that housing per se does not really pay the freight in the city compared to the services they use, while light industrial and commercial will actually add a little extra. So we need to have additional commercial and industrial space in our town. For that reason, I will be asking for a specific plan to the south side of Highway 156, so landowners there can decide what can be done with their land. So those are my plans for San Juan Bautista. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, let's keep you on. We asked you a series of questions as well.
Yes, I know that.
Just as we asked all the other candidates, and yours, some of them were the same, some were different. The first one about AB 3888, same question as before. And the one about upzoning, that was the same question that we asked other candidates, so we know that one. This one, specific to your city, sir, should the city adopt a sphere of influence? I know that's an issue that's been talked about. Number 4, should the city prioritize investing in more rental housing for farm workers? Again, a farm worker housing question. Now, the water and wastewater master plan, that was, I know, very specific to San Juan Bautista, and I know that you guys are on the verge of, you made a lot of progress there, so we wanted to ask about that. And the thought behind this one is, along with that one, as well as a sphere of influence, if you were to adopt one, how would that help the city meet its housing needs? The 6th question is the adoption of an urban growth boundary. And I know that's another discussion that there's a body of folks working on that. So we thought to ask if it could bring opportunities for the city to meet its housing needs. And the last question is a Prop 15 question that we asked everyone.
Right.
So here are your answers. You have 3 minutes to discuss them and give your closing statements.
Thank you. San Juan is using the state ordinance right now, which is AB 3088, and as we've been previously stated, I believe it goes out of, let's say, the protections end against evictions at the end of February. So right now, renters in San Juan are protected from eviction due to COVID issues up until the state ordinance runs out. I'm quite sure that I know that I'd be more than willing to extend that as long as it's COVID related. Upzoning for duplexes and fourplexes, I already stated that we really already have enough R1 housing and that we need more a slightly denser mix of housing. One of the things we really pride ourselves in San Juan Bautista is having a walkable city. Like it's only 3 or 4 blocks from me to downtown to our fine restaurants and eateries and shopping centers. And that's really, and it's that way for most of San Juan Bautista. So, and we want to keep that. That's one of our pride and joys of our historic city. So we really want to, we need to build a little denser in some places so we can meet our regional housing allocation needs. And that's important. And we also need to, some of that needs to be for farm workers also, because we just right outside our city limits are large spinach, lettuce, radish, you know, all kinds of vegetables fields. So many of them are organic farms and they use lots of farm workers. So going on to the wastewater master plan, that's my most, I am an incumbent right now. And I suggested that to my very first meeting I was elected on 4 years ago. I've been pounding on it for 3 years now. It finally got picked up and done. Admittedly, I had some help from the State Water Board when they started to sue us for $800,000. And our total yearly budget is only $1.8 million. So that's a lot of money for us. I do think that we can adopt an urban growth boundary because we don't want Hollister coming and invading us. So we really want to draw a ring around our circle and keep them out. So we're going to do that. And I think we have plenty of infill available in many spots, and we will be able to meet our RENA numbers and provide housing for seniors, farm workers, and low-income people. And do I support Proposition 15? I take a little bit different view. With the COVID, I think particularly the counties are going to need even more money. We have a very poorly funded public health department. They are doing a great job, but they need a lot of help. And I feel a little extra money would help. I know that this proposition started up in the Bay Area where large companies, let's just say Apple, Intel, those type of people haven't been reassessed since the early 1980s, and they're paying 1980s taxes in 2020. And that's one of the reasons for this. And I basically support it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and for your participation.
Thank you.
Diane, we got through all our candidates.
Yeah, we did. That was great. It was really great listening to everybody's perspectives. We appreciate everybody's time tonight, for sure. Yeah,
you know, Prop 15, that's one that we heard a lot of in-depth talks about. That one definitely stands out. It's something that I would say to folks to look up, find out, research for yourself, talk to people about it. There's nuance, and then there's some things that are very clear, but it's hard to, but then we need to put it in the context of our time, our jurisdiction.
That's right.
And today, I hope help folks get a little bit more information that would be useful for them to know about the issues and make their decision on election day.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like the answers that we heard today were an example of showing how important this moment is, and our elected officials, the important role that they have in our community. It was wonderful to see some new folks come onto the election playing field and as candidates, and some folks that have been around for generations, you know, representing the community. And I just think I cannot say how important it is for our local leaders, especially now, to put our community first. And I know it's politics, but over political, you know, feelings and how, you know, historical feelings between people, and putting those aside and really leading at this time for our community and for the wellness and well-being of our children and the next generation. So You know, especially now, who would want to run for election during such a crazy year and such a crazy time? So I just want to give a shout out and a thanks to all of the folks that are running and working so hard for our community and for being here with us tonight. It's very appreciated, and it's an important thing to make sure to exercise that civic muscle and to get out there and vote, especially because our local politics, regardless of the president and federal politics going on, our local politics, impact our day-to-day lives. And so we certainly want you to pay attention to our local politics and local leaders. So.
No, good point. We get most of the information, most of the media coverage on presidential level candidates or federal level, as you said. And of course that has its place and its importance, but regardless of who's there, who our mayors are, who our county supervisors are, who our city council members are, what they know, how they work, and that is going to impact directly our day-to-day lives and I think, to me, that's a shout out for local politics. Get involved, pay attention. And to that, actually, we were talking about the census.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks, there's ways to participate, right? You can go to a city council meeting, a planning commission meeting. There's public forums. And they take some work, and maybe now you have to log on, and that might be hard for some folks, but we're all learning. But participating in the census, that is one of the more accessible things, don't you think? That at least we can participate in to make a difference.
That's right. If you participate in the census and take the census, it takes about 10 minutes. You can do it online, or you can have a phone call. It was supposed to end September 30th, then that went to court. So now we have a few extra days to increase the rate for San Benito County. It impacts, it's about $2,000 per person. So we want to make sure that our folks get counted, and so thankful for you to lift up that tonight, because it's an important issue for San Benito County. It's an easy way to encourage your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, your uncle down the street that you think, oh, you probably didn't apply for, fill out the census. Nudge them a little bit, send a text. It's important for our community.
You said 2,000 per person. Is that every year?
Yes, for 10 years, for a decade.
That's 20,000 then till the next census.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of money for things that we need done.
Yeah, and currently we're about 70% or more. I didn't check today, but yeah, so there are some folks still hustling out there to try to get folks counted, specifically in San Juan Bautista. We have a need, and in our areas by Buena Vista Road area are really important, critical areas to make sure they get counted as well.
Nice. Well, there you have it, 70%. Just get it to 100.
That's right.
Just go out and vote. And my final comments, and I'll let you have the final word. I'm just saying that I'm not from San Benito County, Hollister, or San Juan Bautista. I always enjoy my time there, and the folks that I meet, whether it's friendly or professional or both, like with you. So I love it there. I want the best for San Benito County and all the folks there. And thank you all for spending your evening with us.
That's right.
And thank you, Diane. Thank you to all the candidates. Thank you. Coolest host. It seems to be the hashtag for the day.
Yeah, thanks, Rafa. And, I am a generational resident, my family's been here for a couple generations and of San Benito County. So we've seen it when it was very, very small and seen the growth over the years. And I love this county. I love this community and the people and our children. And that's why I participate in these things, because they're so important. These decisions matter. And so I just, I appreciate you and MBEP for your leadership and for bringing these important issues to San Benito County residents so that we can have a deeper dialogue about these things. It's an important, critical concepts, issues right now. So, so thank you very much for letting Youth Alliance and me in particular participate tonight. And thank you all for your time.
You're very welcome. All right, folks, this show will be rebroadcast later, or the link will be available on our websites and social media and other places, Youth Alliance website. Check them out. Check out all their social media. Thank you for spending part of your evening with us. Good night.